Story 1. It was supposed to be one last big weekend before graduation, the kind of college memory you look back on and laugh about years later. My friends and I had decided to drive down to Black Rock Bash, this massive annual party thrown by students at the University of Arizona. I go to a smaller college upstate, so anything on this scale felt like a big deal. It was a 4-hour drive, and we packed 5 guys into a sedan that should have maxed out at 4. There was me, Marcus, Ray, Josh, and Omar. All of us are over 6 feet tall, so yeah, it was uncomfortable. But the music was good, the mood was high, and we figured we'd suffer through it for the sake of the weekend. Marcus's older sister Danielle was a junior at U of A and had agreed to let us crash at her place. That was gold. Most people sleep in cars or don't sleep at all during Black Rock Bash, so having a floor to throw a sleeping bag on was more than enough. Danielle and her roommates were chill and welcoming, and even though the main party day wasn't until Saturday, we decided to start celebrating Friday night. There's just one person I need to talk about before the story really begins. His name is Zane. Now, Zane isn't exactly our friend. He's more like an orbiting presence. He's loud, tries too hard, constantly interrupts people, and somehow always shows up to events he wasn't invited to. We all have that one guy who forces his way into social circles without ever really being accepted. That's Zane. I don't hate him, but he's crossed the line more than once, and most of us try to keep our distance. Anyway, about an hour after we settled in at Danielle's apartment, we decided to make a quick run to a local liquor store. It was just the 5 of us. The air was warm, the streets buzzing with energy. Students everywhere pre-gaming, music spilling out of open windows. We loaded up on cheap beer, snacks, and a bottle of something stronger, and were walking back when we saw him, Zane, standing outside the store, hands in his pockets, like he'd been waiting for us. No one said anything. We didn't greet him. He didn't greet us. He just fell in step with us, like he'd been part of the group all along. A few blocks in, he finally spoke. "Why are you guys so surprised to see me?" he asked, like we were the weird ones. We exchanged awkward glances. Marcus sort of grunted in response, and we kept walking. Zane being here wasn't just random. It was off. We hadn't told him we were coming. None of us had mentioned it to him, and we definitely hadn't invited him. He hadn't even been in our group chat. So how did he know? And more importantly, why was he suddenly here? Back at the apartment, the vibe shifted. Danielle opened the door, and before any of us could explain, Zane stepped past her and said, "I'm staying here," like it was already settled. Danielle looked confused but assumed he was part of our crew. Marcus's face turned red. He pulled Zane aside and asked him what the hell he was doing. Zane just shrugged and said, "I figured it'd be cool." Marcus wasn't having it. He told him flat out. This wasn't cool. This wasn't planned, and lying to his sister to get in crossed the line. Zane pushed back, saying we were being dramatic, that it wasn't a big deal. Marcus disagreed, firmly. He told Zane to leave. Zane stood in the hallway for 20 minutes trying to argue his way back in. Marcus never budged. Eventually, Zane walked off, muttering something under his breath. We locked the door behind him. That night, we got pretty drunk and joked about the whole thing. In hindsight, we should have taken it more seriously, but at the time, it was just another Zane moment, the kind of weirdness we'd come to expect from him. It wasn't until the next day that we realized something even weirder. Marcus had been sharing his iPhone location with Zane for months, completely forgetting about it, and that's how Zane had found us. Not because he got lucky, because he had been tracking us. We laughed about it at first, the whole location sharing thing. Marcus had completely forgotten he'd ever shared his iPhone location with Zane, probably back when they were in a group project together, or something random like that. It was funny for maybe a minute. Then it started to feel less funny, more invasive, like Zane hadn't just shown up by coincidence. He had been watching us, following our movements. That realization sank in quietly, like a slow drop of cold water down your spine. But we brushed it off. That's the part that still bugs me. We brushed it off like it was just another weird Zane moment. Saturday came, and Black Rock Bash delivered exactly what everyone said it would. Wall-to-wall crowds, music shaking the ground, people dancing on roofs, drinks getting passed between strangers like candy. It was chaos in the best way. We spent most of the day hopping from one party to the next. By late afternoon, the energy had started to wind down, and we found ourselves back at Danielle's apartment, joined by 5 more friends who had driven in from another school. We filled them in on the Zane situation. How he randomly appeared, lied to Danielle, and had apparently been tracking us using Marcus's phone location. Everyone agreed it was weird, borderline obsessive, but no one seemed seriously concerned. We were all too tired, too buzzed, and too caught up in the party afterglow to think about it for long. That was until Ryland, one of the newer guys who had just arrived, casually said, "I think I still have Zane's location." He opened his phone, scrolled a bit, then froze. "He's right here," he said, turning his phone to show us. That little blue dot, Zane's location, was hovering right over our apartment complex. Not nearby, not down the street, on top of us. Everyone fell silent, and then, as if someone had flipped a switch, the dot started moving. Fast, like someone driving away. No one said it, but we all had the same thought. Zane had been watching us from somewhere close. Maybe from his car. Maybe from just outside. That should have been the final red flag. The one that made us call someone, take real action. But we didn't. We laughed again. Nervous, uncomfortable laughter. "This dude's nuts," someone said, and that was that. That night, we all passed out early. The day had drained us. The drinking, the heat, the constant motion. I ended up on a blanket in the corner of the living room, wedged between a table and a backpack. It must have been well after midnight when I woke up. At first I thought it was just a dream, or maybe someone stumbling to the bathroom. But then I heard it. Glass shattering. Sharp. Loud. Close. I sat up fast, heart already racing. Eyes darting around the room. Everyone else was still out cold. No one moved. I stood up slowly, grabbing an empty wine bottle off the floor. It was all I had. My phone was dead. I didn't want to call out. I didn't want to make noise. I crept toward the sound, every step heavy with that feeling you get when your body knows something's wrong. The sliding door that led to the balcony had been completely shattered. A rock, the size of a grapefruit, sat in the middle of the floor, surrounded by broken glass. I didn't need time to guess. I knew it was Zane. I turned to go wake someone up, and that's when I saw it. The closet door. The handle moved. Just slightly. Just once. But enough. I froze. The fear I felt in that moment is something I don't know how to put into words. It wasn't panic. It was deeper than that. Colder. Like something inside me stopped working. I almost opened the door. My hand was reaching for it, but something in my brain screamed not to. I backed away, turned, and ran straight to the bedroom. I shook Marcus awake, told him what happened, and together we went back to the living room. The closet door was open now, empty, no one in sight. But then Marcus reached inside and pulled something out. A kitchen knife. A big one. He held it up, stared at it for a second, then looked at me. "He was in here," he said. "He was waiting." That knife told us everything we needed to know. Zane hadn't just come back to mess with us. He'd come back for something else. Something darker. We never saw him again after that. He blocked all of us. Vanished from social media. No one's heard from him since. And honestly, I don't think any of us wants to. Story 2. It was supposed to be a chill weekend. Just a simple road trip to get away from the base for a bit. I was stationed at Fort Carson, Colorado, and had gotten close to 2 other soldiers there, Tyler and Lena. We were all around the same age, early 20s, and all starting to feel that itch of routine wearing us down. Tyler suggested we drive up to Denver for a day or two, just to reset our brains and experience something outside the usual grind. Lena offered to drive since she had the roomiest car, a beat-up dark green SUV, with enough space for the 3 of us and our gear. We left on a Friday afternoon with snacks in the back seat, music playing low, and the kind of lazy conversations you only have on long drives. The highway stretched out in front of us, mostly empty except for the occasional semi. We were somewhere between Colorado Springs and Denver when it started. Tyler was the first to notice. "That car behind us," he said, leaning slightly to look through the rear window. "Did it just pull off the shoulder when we passed?" I turned and saw it too. A black SUV, maybe a Tahoe or something similar, was following us at a steady distance. It hadn't been there before. I was sure of it. Lena didn't say anything, just changed lanes to see if it would follow. It did. She changed again a few minutes later. So did the SUV. We all started to feel it then. That shift in the air, that heavy silence that creeps in when your gut starts telling you something's wrong. We tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was just a coincidence. Maybe the driver was heading in the same direction. But then the SUV turned on flashing lights. Red and blue. Unmistakable. We were getting pulled over. Lena pulled onto the shoulder, and the SUV stopped behind us. We all looked at each other, kind of frozen. I remember thinking, that doesn't feel like a cop. Something was off. The man who stepped out wasn't in a uniform. Not one I recognized. He was wearing black tactical gear, bulky and clean, but there was no badge, no name tag, no agency listed, just a patch on his arm with writing too small to read. He didn't approach the window like normal officers do. He just stood there, behind our car, almost like he was examining it, watching us. Lena whispered, "Should I say something?" But before we could figure it out, Tyler rolled down his window and called out, "Is there a problem, officer?" That's when the man started walking. Not rushing, just calm, deliberate steps until he reached Lena's window. He asked for her license and registration. No explanation, no reason for the stop. Lena handed them over, hesitating, but not wanting to escalate anything. The man walked back to the SUV without another word. We waited and waited. 10 minutes passed, then 15. We started whispering again, all of us unsettled. There were no other cars, no backup, just us and this unmarked SUV in the middle of nowhere. Then the driver's door opened again, but this time, 2 more men got out. Same clothes, same lack of identification. They stood near the back of Lena's car, saying nothing. The first guy came back to the window and asked Lena if her father was in the military. Lena blinked, confused, and asked him what he meant. He pointed to a bumper sticker on her car that said, "U.S. Army." She laughed awkwardly and said, "No, that's mine. I'm in the Army." Then she nodded toward us and added, "Them too." Something changed right then. I saw it in his posture. His shoulders tightened, and he glanced back at the other 2 guys. They looked at each other for a split second, like some silent message had passed between them. And then, without any explanation, he handed Lena's license back and told her we were free to go. No warning, no citation, just a flat, drive safe. All 3 of them got back into the SUV and drove off so fast it felt like they couldn't get away from us fast enough. We sat there in stunned silence for a while before Lena started the car again. We didn't talk much the rest of the way to Denver, but the whole drive, we kept looking in the mirrors, checking behind us. Whatever that was, it didn't feel like law enforcement. It felt like something else entirely, something that had changed its mind at the last second. We tried to forget about it. After we got to Denver and checked into a cheap motel, we told ourselves it had just been a weird encounter. Maybe they were real cops. Maybe they were part of some strange task force that didn't have to follow the usual rules. We went out that night, grabbed dinner, walked around the city, and tried to pretend the moment on the highway hadn't happened, but none of us really relaxed. I kept thinking about that second when everything shifted, when Lena said we were all military, and those men suddenly backed off. It was too sharp a change, too intentional. We spent the weekends doing normal things, coffee shops, a movie, just enough to distract ourselves. By the time we drove back to Fort Carson on Sunday, The tension had dulled, like a bad dream you're trying not to bring up. But then came the news. It was about a week later. Tyler and I were in the rec room on base, just watching the local station on one of the wall-mounted TVs. I wasn't even paying attention at first until I heard the words, "double homicide." The anchor said something about a couple being found dead off a highway not far from where we'd been pulled over. They didn't give a lot of details, just that the victims had been robbed and dumped in a ditch. Then they showed a picture of the area and mentioned the vehicle found nearby, a black SUV, a Tahoe. The reporter said it had been reported stolen months ago from out of state. I didn't even have to look at Tyler. We both just stared at the screen, and I felt the blood drain from my face. It was too similar, too close. Same stretch of highway, same type of vehicle. 3 guys with no real identification. It clicked in both of our heads at the exact same time. That could have been us. We found Lena and told her what we'd seen. The 3 of us sat down and went over every detail we could remember. How long do they wait before approaching? They never explained why they pulled us over. They acted like they were evaluating us more than anything else. It all lined up. And the moment we mentioned we were military, it was like a switch flipped. They didn't just let us go. They got out of there as fast as they could. I don't know what would have happened if Lena had said the wrong thing. If she had hesitated or said she wasn't the one in the military. I don't like to think about it too much. We reported everything. Not that it made much of a difference. We gave our account to the base security, and then went to the local police. They wrote it all down, took our statements, thanked us, and that was about it. We never got a call back. No follow-up, just silence. Maybe it didn't go anywhere. Maybe it helped more than we'll ever know. But that sense of helplessness stuck with me. The idea that we were out there, in the middle of nowhere, and completely at someone else's mercy. It didn't matter that we were trained, that we were capable. We didn't have weapons. We didn't have backup. We were 3 people in a car, and if they had wanted to hurt us, no one would have known until it was too late. I still remember how cold the air felt in that moment. Not just the actual temperature, but the kind of cold that lives in your gut when you know you're in danger. And the fact that those men weren't stupid. They backed off when they realized we had some kind of status, some kind of connection to the system that makes it worse, because it means they were thinking, they were calculating. They didn't want attention. They didn't want risk. They wanted victims who wouldn't be missed right away. Civilians, travelers, people passing through. That's what we were until Lena spoke up. That's what saved us. A simple sticker on a bumper-and-a-half-second decision to tell the truth. It still makes my stomach twist to think how close we came to being another name on the news. Another set of photos in a crime segment. We got lucky. That's the truth of it. Pure, dumb luck. And I don't know who those men were, or if they were caught, or if they're still out there. But I know we met them. I know what it feels like to be chosen. And then, somehow, spared. Story 3. It happened during a solo road trip about 10 years ago. I was driving from my old apartment in West Patterson, New Jersey to Fort Worth, Texas, where my parents were living at the time. I hadn't been back in a while, and it felt like something I needed to do. The drive was supposed to be simple. I had a few playlists ready, snacks in the passenger seat, and enough gas to make decent time. Somewhere along the way, maybe in Arkansas or the edge of Oklahoma, I honestly don't remember exactly. My car started acting weird. It was sputtering, jerking a little, and the engine light started flashing. I ignored it as long as I could until I had no choice but to pull over. I ended up on the shoulder of a long, empty road with nothing around me but flat fields and scattered trees. No buildings, no gas stations, no other cars, just a stretch of road that looked like it hadn't seen traffic in hours. I got out and popped the hood, not because I knew what I was doing, but because I didn't want to just sit there looking helpless. Truth is, I know very little about cars. I was just kind of moving things around, trying to look like I had a clue. I figured eventually I'd call for help, maybe a tow truck, even though I didn't have AAA. I was already bracing myself for the cost when I heard a truck approaching. It pulled up slowly behind me. A white pickup, no front plate, windows down, and dusty, like it had been on the road a long time. A guy stepped out. He looked like he was in his 30s, maybe older. Messy hair, patchy beard, worn boots. He walked like someone used to physical work, like he belonged in that landscape. He didn't ask if I needed help. He just started looking under the hood like it was obvious that I did. I thanked him. He said he was a mechanic and that it looked like I needed a compression tester. I didn't even know what that was, but I nodded like I understood. He told me he had a buddy who might be nearby and could bring one. Then he said something that made me pause. His phone was dead, and he asked if he could use mine. I didn't think anything of it at the time. I handed it over without hesitation. He took the phone with one hand and almost immediately reached into his jacket with the other. That's when he pulled out a gun. I froze. My stomach dropped. He told me to sit down on the shoulder and keep my hands visible. His voice was calm, flat, like he'd done this before. He didn't yell or threaten, just gave instructions like this was a routine thing. I did exactly what he said. He emptied my pockets, took my wallet, asked me to unlock my phone, and grabbed my backpack from the front seat. He didn't take the car or hurt me. He just walked back to his truck with everything and drove off. And just like that, I was alone again. My phone was gone. My money. My ID. Everything that said I was me. I sat there for what felt like forever, trying to decide what to do. Eventually, another car came by. A couple in their 40s. They pulled over and helped me get the car started. Even gave me handwritten directions to Fort Worth since I had no GPS anymore. I thanked them over and over. By the time I got to my parents' place, I was still in shock. I didn't even tell them the full story at first. I just said something happened with the car and left it at that. I couldn't shake the feeling of how easy it had been for that man to take everything from me. How fast it had happened. How alone I'd felt. There was no blood, no violence. But the fear, that lingering fear, stuck with me long after the road was behind me. For a while after it happened, I tried to move on. I replaced my IDs, canceled my cards, filed a police report, and did everything I was supposed to do. But something about it kept nagging at me. It wasn't just the robbery.it. It was the way it had all gone down. So calm, so practiced. Like he'd done it before. Like he knew exactly what to say and how to move. A few weeks passed and I thought the worst was over. Then I started getting mail. At first, it was small stuff. Junk mail from banks I didn't recognize. But then came a letter from a credit card company, thanking me for opening an account. Then another. Then another. One even had a balance over $1,000, all spent in a town I'd never been to. That's when I realized this guy wasn't just a thief. He'd stolen my identity, my name, my information, everything he needed to become me. I contacted the banks, filed fraud reports, placed freezes on my credit, did all the right things. And still, more charges kept popping up. Every time I thought I had it under control, something else showed up. It was like fighting smoke. Every time I swatted at it, it reappeared somewhere else. But the part that really messed with me was when I got a call from my health insurance provider. Someone had received emergency care under my name in Georgia. It wasn't just a billing mistake. There were actual medical records being added to my file. Records that didn't belong to me. That could have caused real damage if I ever ended up in a hospital unconscious. I gave the police all of this. I begged them to follow up, but without a name, a plate, a photo, there was nothing they could do. I felt helpless, like this guy was always one step ahead, so I decided to stop playing defense. I started tracking everything myself. I set up Google alerts for my name and looked up every city tied to the fraud. I checked my credit report daily. I went through forums and social media, looking for anything that might connect back to him. It was obsessive. I knew that, but I couldn't let it go. I couldn't stand the thought of him doing this to someone else. One night, I started checking Craigslist in towns where charges had happened. I didn't expect much, but in Jackson, Tennessee, I found something strange. A listing for a set of power tools that matched the exact items from one of the fraud purchases. Same model numbers, Same package deal. Something about it just felt off. I messaged the seller pretending to be interested. We exchanged a few emails, and eventually he agreed to meet in a public place. Said to bring cash. I almost drove there myself. I wanted to look him in the eye. I wanted to ask why. But I knew I couldn't trust myself not to do something I'd regret. So instead, I called the police in Jackson. I told them everything. At first, they were hesitant, but when I gave them the details and told them about the tools and the connection to the fraud, they agreed to check it out. The next day, I got a call. Apparently, when the guy saw the cops waiting near the meetup spot, he panicked and took off. He didn't get far, lost control and crashed into a ditch. They arrested him on the spot. He tried to deny everything at first, but once they mentioned the tools, he cracked. Said a friend had given them to him. Gave up a name. That led to another arrest. Then another. In the end, there were 3 of them working together. Robbing people on highways, stealing identities, selling stolen goods. It had been going on for months, and I wasn't the only victim. I was just one of many. But finally, it was over. I can't explain the relief I felt. It didn't erase what had happened, but it gave me back something I'd lost: control. I still think about that first moment on the roadside. How easily I handed him my phone. How fast it all unraveled. But I also think about how far I went to take my life back. And I hope, if nothing else, that this story makes someone out there pause and think before they trust a stranger too quickly. Because sometimes the real danger doesn't look like a monster. Sometimes it looks like a mechanic.